Welcome to Dave Talks Some More, the podcast at the intersection of humor and, Hey, I'm your host, Dave, and together we'll explore a riveting world of mundane topics with unparalleled indifference. So get ready for a riveting journey through, whatever. This is Dave Talks Some More. Okay, far out. Thanks for joining us again on Sunday afternoon. And when I say joining us, I more mean joining me than anybody else, because my regular foil and co-host is off for the week, doing things that I don't approve of. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but if it's what they think they are, I'm judging him harshly. And I'll just go ahead and give a preview for next week's show. Is all going to be about abusing his recreational choices, and that's going to be a very long show, giving him hell for where I think he is and what I think he's doing. But I'm going to give him a chance to defend himself, so I won't start in on it right now. That will be a long show. This is probably going to be a short show because if you've listened to previous episodes, you know that I have tried twice to do the show flying solo. Both of them absolute disasters. One of them hit the side of the mountain, and I still have scar tissue from that. And it's weird that I say that I'm expecting this to be a short show, because anybody who's listening to this can see precisely to the second how long the show actually goes. So I'm not telling you anything about how long the show goes. That's I'm literally the only person who will ever have anything to do with it that does not know what the length of the show will be. That's boring, so let me move on to something else. And the reason that I'm decided, well, I need to go ahead and give it a shot, other than just kind of grow the podcasting muscle and just try to jump out there and do something that feels a little uncomfortable, is we already missed last week's show, which that one really wasn't my fault. My wife and I have been bouncing back and forth. The same cold, the same virus, or whatever it is. And this time last week, this is what it sounded like if I tried to do a podcast. That's as much volume I could put out. I mean, I've heard of people who have had laryngitis before. I didn't really think that it was a real thing. I just thought it was like a made up deal where you cannot produce sound with your vocal cords. I had a cold that was so bad that I literally could not produce any sound with my vocal cords. But I was actually going to go forward with the show even though I couldn't talk and make any sounds, because again, I figured the co-host here, whatever he is, could come and carry a little bit of weight for me, but he bailed. And we also, for the first time, we were going to have an honest-to-God guest. This is truth. Somebody who was so interested in the show that, like the day before, he's like, "What's the show about? Have you listened to it?" No. And I was like, "Thanks for the enthusiasm. That's a tremendous upvote." So, really judging anybody who comes on the show. So if you get invited to be a guest sometime in the future, get ready to be judged very hard. But it was going to be, for me, was going to be one of the more interesting shows that we would do, because I've tried to be a non-topical deal. Like, I don't want to talk about sports. I don't want to talk about religion. I really don't want to talk about politics. And good luck talking to people about art and stuff. But this was going to be a break from that, and we were going to talk law. There's going to be three lawyers sitting in a room talking law, and I actually had some ideas about how to make it appeal to people who really don't have much familiarity with the law or even any interest in it. I do it full time, for my work, and I find it endlessly interesting. But I know that most of the time when I hear people talking about the law, even though I have an interest in it, it is still tedious to listen to them talk because most people present it in such a way that it's really tiresome. Which raises a similar subject. I ought not be talking about shows that never happened because it doesn't really do a whole lot other than to tell you it really would have been good. But now it will never be. But it raises the similar topic of the podcast that I have all these thoughts about what would make something interesting because, as Sunday gets closer, I start thinking a little harder and harder about what is it that can be talked about that would be interesting. And I know that in the past I've talked about history and my interest in it. And I know most people don't really have that, but it's kind of like talking about the law. I'm interested in that, and I think that that this would have been an interesting show. I very often thought that talking about history would be interesting. It's as much of a hobby as anything. Reading about it, and you will meet people when the subject of history comes up, or I'm reading a book about. I mean, not actually, but if I were reading a book about the Civil War, or about Renaissance France, or the Roman Empire, or whatever it would be, to me it's incredibly interesting. To other people, it is stultifying and boring. And I suspect that it's because nobody listened to my history podcast that needs to be put into production, because if it were put into production, I think I could make it interesting to everybody. And here's the big idea behind that. All that history is stories. That is literally all it is. What you're living in right now, whatever date today is, this is history. And you are having your history, and your history is stories. And right now to you, it just seems, whatever's going on in your life probably feels mundane and day to day and banal and not terribly interesting. But you add it all up, and there's some story to be told. And when you're around other people, what do you do but talk about the interesting highlights of the things that happened to you, and the interesting people around you who in history class, might be characters or historical figures, but in your life, it's just your crazy cousin or your stupid neighbor or whatever it is. And, magnify all those stories on a local level or a national level, and you've got a whole lot of stories together. And all that history is taking the most interesting stories of banal day-to-day things that happened. Who was the most interesting character? What was the coolest thing somebody did? Somebody marched from Greece to India at the head of an army when there were no maps. That's a pretty cool story as to who it was and how he did it, and what were the adventures that they had along the way. I mean, that's what fiction is nothing but cool characters and interesting plots and double plots and backtracks and character development. Well, that's all that history is, and so I don't think of it in terms of dates and places, but very interesting people doing really cool things, and what makes it fun is when you get a small period of time and everybody already knows each other. That's for people who are into things like Civil War or our local history. What makes it interesting is you talk about people who already knew each other, who had known each other for decades, and then all of a sudden they're thrown into a new situation. And how did they react, and what did they do? And most of the events took place over a very small area. And so the hills and valleys, those become characters as well. And I just think that it would be interesting to present not history. I would never have a history podcast, but just a story. And you don't need to know that it was Alexander the Great that went from Greece to India. It's just, let me tell you a story about a guy, and let me tell you what happened. And I'm seriously considering that maybe when I have an off day like this, when I don't have the regular cast together, that maybe it's just, hey, let me pull up a microphone and do like I did on the Thanksgiving episode that we had a few months ago, and I'll tell you one story, and that one took about 35 minutes. It was a long story. I don't know if it was any good or not, but it was a story. And it took up an episode, so that has value all by itself. But anyway, I'm thinking that that's what I'm going to do. So, as ever, I always start off the show by kind of talking about the show. But anyway, yeah, I was out with a cold, but I was going to watch a couple of other people just talk, and I might be able to make enough sound to throw some topics out there, and we just see where it goes. Because even though I had this cold, and even though I was heavily medicated, when I went to the doctor, they did this thing that my body. It turns out that I am the worst meth head ever. Like I do not qualify for meth because, and I found this out when I had COVID, and at the end of 2020, I had COVID to the point, like COVID came out like, was it February or March of 2020, I think? Yeah. And in really like a week before Christmas, I caught a brutal case of COVID, and I'd had all the vaccines and the whole bit, but I got it anyway. And I caught it to such an extent where when my wife was driving me to St. Dominic's, I literally thought I am going there to die. And if you've never had the feeling that you were like for real, like I'm really going to die, and it's how long is it to, however long it is to drive to St. Dominic's, I was literally thinking, this is what it's like to die. I probably got a couple of days, and then I'm going to be dead. I mean, I was, because a lot of people were dropping dead, and there are a lot of horror stories coming out about if you go to the hospital, that's the worst place to go because they just you only come out feet first. And if you've never had that experience, let me tell you what it's like. It's nothing. It's like it's not cinematic. There's no great emotional crest. There's no swell of orchestral music as you die. It's just think about what you did this morning. You got up, you went to the kitchen, you made a cup of coffee, you sat down, you looked out the window, you died. You got up and got something to eat, and it's just another thing that you do. And I was very much struck by the idea that here I am, I'm going to die, and okay, well, it's just another thing. But as luck would have it, I apparently did not die, or else I'm an extremely solid ghost, one way or the other. But they gave me the miracle drug called steroids. And it turns out that the way that my body metabolizes steroids is it's basically like meth for me. Like if you've ever seen, and I'm getting a look from somebody who's like, oh yeah, really? Tell me all about it. Tell me all about that. If you've ever looked at a bird on a branch and you see them just jerking around, like their head's looking one way, and then in an instant their head's looking completely the other way, and their feet are hopping around, and all of their movements are incredibly lightning quick. And a bird is a good case study for what it felt like for me to be on steroids, aka meth, because a bird would just bounce and hop around and jerk and move in the most amazingly lightning quick, unpredictable ways. And that's the way that I was. And I'm a big person, and not particularly quick or coordinated or athletic. And I was hopping and jumping and popping around like I would imagine it's like to be using other substances. Couldn't sit down, definitely couldn't sleep. Amazingly productive at housework, like like I was just any possible thing that I could think of to do to burn up some energy. That's what I was doing, and I'll tell you that whole story. Well, to the point that the day after I got out of the hospital, at what I took to be a near-death experience, I was driving down to Laurel, Mississippi to go file a 2-page motion with the court, because I mean, why wouldn't I? I was out of my mind. I was so hopped up on perfectly legal prescription medicine. So I say all that to say that they gave me another dose, and I did not make the connection this time around. Tells you what an idiot I am, that they had again given me steroids. So by the middle of last week, I had taken God knows how many of these pills, and it turns out it takes about 4 days for it to completely metabolize from my system. So, and now I'm pretty much on a crash. So, I'm the worst alcoholic in the world, because I'm not against drinking, and sometimes I do drink, but I can't stand the way that it makes me feel. And now it turns out I'm the worst meth head in the world, because I literally cannot stand the way that it makes me feel. And the idea that there are people who break into houses so that they can get the money, so that they can get one of these pills. I almost want to say, here, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say, here, you can have mine, but really you can have mine. I've got a whole bottle full of them, and if we get short of cash, maybe we'll have that. Not that I just admitted to a felony in a podcast, but anyway, these are the kind of things that I say when my personal Ed McMahon is gone, and I'm recovering from laryngitis. So I'm a little bit out of my head. Let's see. I still have not actually gotten to any show content yet. That's typical. I'm about 15 minutes in, and I've gone absolutely nowhere. So total loss of focus here. Let's see. Big thing that happened this week. I actually got a new car. So that's right. That's right. I'm low-key thrilled about that. And there's you cannot, I don't know if women are this way, but you cannot talk to a guy and bring up the subject of my first car without, this is the most guy thing in the world. If you talk about my first car, every guy in the world has got a story about, well, let me tell you about how my first car was a piece of junk. And they remember the year, they remember the model, they remember the color, they remember where it came from, they remember the time that it put them down during the big date. Every guy's got the same tragic story of my first car. So since I do like to tell a story, let me tell you what my first car story is. And I think I alluded to this. So last week when I was talking about all the password problems that I've had, one of the things that they ask you when you have to reset your password is what the make and model of your first car was. So here, if you want to hack all of my accounts, I'll go ahead and give you the answer. My first car, remember I was born in 1964. My first car was a 1964 Ford Galaxy. Which, if you're old enough to remember that's back when cars were cars. By God, they were solid steel. This thing was built like a tank. It weighed as much as a tank. It had treads like a tank. a 1964 Ford Galaxy. This is the only car, this is the only vehicle that I've ever had that had a Shonuff V8 engine, which, yeah, there's a picture of it. Yeah, brings back memories, buddy. It did not look that good, and that's part of that's actually a good looking car. I wouldn't mind owning that now. I wasn't so thrilled about owning it then. Yeah, a V8 engine basically has the same functional equivalent as a rocket booster does now. You will see big vehicles now, and all they have is a 4-cylinder engine. I've got, and I don't want to spoil the story, but this one ends with me. You know, this new vehicle that I've got is pretty big, but all it has is quote unquote, all it has is a 4-cylinder engine. Well, a V8 engine is like 16 4-cylinder engines. That's not technically accurate, but feels like. I mean, your solid steel vehicle, incredibly heavy weight, but with that rocket booster V8 engine, you punch it and it just jumps off the line. And I know because I drag raced it a little bit, and it was really cool because, you know, just this old looking car, and you get up against the Camaro, that 1964 Ford Galaxy, big, clunky, ugly, it would smoke a Camaro because it had the rocket engine. So anyway, and speaking of the rocket engine, it was previously owned by my grandfather, whose last name was Rocket. Lowell Rocket had it. And when the time came, he did the right thing, which is he gave it or sold it at a very cheap price to my brother. So my brother was the second owner of the '64 Ford Galaxy, and just a great, awful story about it. My brother loves cars way, way more than I do. And I like to think that I love cars, but he really loves cars. He's a mechanical engineer, and so he understands them, and he loves fixing them and you know, messing around with the engine and doing things that I would have no clue how to do and would love to do it, because there's nothing more, I think, just more cool than being able to fix up new and old car, and I'd love to know how to do that, but I don't. And but one of the two fix-ups that my brother had, first one obviously was to install a good stereo system because, you know, he was 16 or 17 years old. And the second thing second fix-up, also not mechanical, was he was going to get it painted. And so he had figured, by the time that he actually took delivery of the car, so to speak, he had already decided what color is going to be, which is this beautiful midnight blue. So, you know, good luck finding a picture on the internet of a midnight blue 1964 Ford Galaxy. If you do, I'm impressed. You have better Google skills than most. You know, this is back when for $350 you could take your car to Makos and get your car painted just any imaginable color. Midnight blue is apparently an imaginable color. And so, you know, he was not given the money. He did it the right way. He saved it up he had a lawn mowing business, and he saved up the money. And, you know, as soon as we got it, drove it over to Makos and got it painted midnight blue. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful dark color. You know, I still admire his ability to pick something out that looked that nice, but he had a downfall. And the downfall, I mentioned a Camaro. Like when I was growing up in the 70s, there were two cool cars. There was a Corvette, which nobody could afford, and there was a Camaro, which also nobody could afford, but you might be able to afford a broke down 7-year-old version of a Camaro. You'll never afford a Corvette. But one of our mutual friends had a broke down Camaro that the bodywork was more Bondo than it was actual metal. But it had a bitchin' sound system on it. So when it was rattling around and making all kinds of terrible noises, you couldn't hear because the sound system was so good. And one of the, this guy was a little older than me for sure. And one of the cool things that he did, if you could go to Kmart for like $2, you could get a pinstripe detailing kit. And it was just a little piece. No, it was a very, very long, like yards and yards and yards of very thin white tape. That's all it was. And what you could do was detail your car with this white tape. Like if you didn't know any better, you do something stupid like detailing flames coming out of the rear panel of your car. There's no way you could do that and it not come off looking lame. But Mitch, who owned the Camaro, Mitch he got it right, and I don't know who helped him out, but he got his detail tape from Kmart, and he detailed his Camaro in just such a way that it really looked good. It offset against a nice gold color, and Mitch had just a bitchin' old Camaro. It looked good. So, my brother's just gotten this 64 Ford now Midnight Blue back from Maaco's. And so he goes to Kmart, and he gets his a very long spool of white detailing paint. And here's what, and he does basically the same thing that, on the Galaxy that Mitch had done on his Camaro. And but here's how you do it. Everywhere where you see a contour, everywhere that the metal makes a corner, which if you look at a car, you'll see a lot of places on your car where there's a contour, where the metal is going one way and then it goes another way because it's a turn, it's a bend, it's a contour. That really is, if you're going to do detail work, that is where you'd put the details on. It just is. That's where it looks right. And so, my brother has got the detailing tape, and contours are not hard to see or find or feel. And so everywhere that he saw a contour, he's putting the tape down, these long white lines on the doors, on the rear panel, on the front panel, on the hood, on the back, on the trunk. If there's a contour on it, he puts the white tape on it. And it looked pretty good when from the perspective of somebody putting it on, it looked pretty good. But the problem was, after he was done, or when he was getting close to done, now he steps back. He walks away from the car and he steps back 20 feet. And he realizes, holy crap, I've really overdone it, because the car looks like a sheet of blue graph paper, like blue paper with white cross hatching, and it's white tape everywhere. And it just looks, like I say, like graph paper. It just looks awful. And so, no problem that the tape does peel off. It's no big deal. Well, the problem was he'd forgotten that what he should have done when he started putting the tape on was wait for the Maaco paint to cure. Well, it hadn't cured yet. So when you start taking the paint off, when you start taking the tape off, you're taking the paint off as well. So any way you cut it, you can have a white stripe on every single contour of the car, or you can have the undercut, this raggedy line of the undercolor coming through because you peeled away tape and the midnight blue paint. And so, and he, it's not like he had another $350 to go, try again. And so he was stuck with it. So he is, of course I'm making fun of him because that's what you do when you're the younger brother. And so, he's driving to the high school in his new 64 Ford Galaxy with this. It's already an ugly car by the late 1970s, but it is absolutely ghastly. And he can't park the car fast enough and get away from it. The only thing that he can do that's cool is pop the hood and make sure everybody understands, but it does have a V8 engine. And and that part of it is cool, but nobody is, you know, these are high school kids. Nobody's going to appreciate that. They're just looking at, you know, what is in effect the worst paint job in the history of cars. So, you know, I made fun of them tirelessly until it was my turn to inherit that car. And I can tell you my experience driving the ugliest car in the world is the looks that you get. And you know, I'll cap the Ford Galaxy story off a little bit by saying it happened twice that I asked a girl out at LSU and had them, you know, you know what you do. You drive up to the girl's dorm, park the car, you go into the lobby, you pick up the phone, the girl comes down, and she walks out in the parking lot, and she sees you going for this eyesore of a car, and both times they said the same thing. This is a joke, right? This is a practical joke. And twice I had the girl say, there's no way that I'm going out in this car. I'm not going to be seen with this thing. So it was that absolutely brutal, ugly. The car finally met with a grisly death because my grandfather, you know, after no other grandchildren would take the thing, my grandfather took it back and used, you know, because it had such a powerful engine, all he had to do was throw a tow hitch modify the bumper and throw a tow hitch on the back of it, and could use the car to tow his trailer and boat around, which he did. And but you know, by the time he took possession of it, you know, I mean, he had grandkids that were in their 30s, so I don't know how old he was, but I do know that he towed his bass boat to False River in in Louisiana. And you know, they have those boat launches, and so he was backing up the bass boat and the trailer into the boat launch, and got the boat into the water, got the trailer into the water, and got the Galaxy into the water. And about the time that he got the front axle of the Galaxy into the water, he realized maybe he needed to stop. Maybe he had the boat pretty well launched by then, with the front of the car already in the water. So he got out and kind of had the same experience. My brother walked away, got about 20 feet away, and realized, gosh, I just parked my car in False River. So it was a total loss. He did launch the boat, but he also launched the car with it. And so that was the end of the 1964 Galaxy. The capper to all of that is, and kind of the revenge that my brother got was, when we were upperclassmen in college, my father offered to buy each of us a car. And this will tell you somebody who knows cars versus somebody who does not know cars. The car, and it was within reason, within a certain dollar range. Here's how much you pick the car, and this is how much I'm going to give you to spend on it. So that's nice. And so what my brother picked out was a convertible 1967 Wimbledon white Ford Mustang. And, you know, because he knows all about cars, it was absolutely cherry. And it was already good when he got it, but, you know, it was a soft top convertible. I don't think they had hard top convertibles back then. He replaced that, got rid of all the mildew, cleaned up the body, tuned up the engine, and I mean, it was an absolute beauty. That's what somebody who is given that kind of offer, that's what they do. That's the kind of car that they get. Because I thought that Mustang was so cool, I also was offered something similar. My father had a coworker who was about to get a new car, and he was trading in his old car, and, you know, was made the offer, would you like to buy it? You know, I'll give it to you for the same money I'm going to trade it in for. It was a Mustang 2. And a Mustang 2 compared to a Mustang is like comparing a Pinto to a Porsche. I mean, a Mustang 2 is a brutally ugly car, and that was back in the late 70s when cars were becoming incredibly ugly because the only thing that mattered was making them fuel efficient. And I will say Mustang 2 is incredibly fuel efficient, but it's also basically a Pinto. So, laugh at my brother all I want. He came away with a Cherry 67 Mustang. It's an absolute show car. It's won trophies. He's taking it to car shows, and it's show enough won trophies. It's gorgeous. And God, the Mustang 2, such an ugly car, such a broke down piece of junk that I'll never forget. We took out an ad in the Morning Advocate, back when you would sell cars by classified ads, and we had a guy come to do a test drive of the car. And he got in the car and he drove. He got 3 houses away, and the car broke down on him. That's one of the many places in my life where I learned just supreme embarrassment as the guy brings the keys back to us and just gives me and my father a look like, what kind of criminals are you? So that was my bad luck with Mustangs, but I rebounded really well. And I discovered the joys of A, pickup trucks, B, manual transmission. And let me fast forward to say I will not have a car that doesn't have a manual transmission. If for no other reason, it's the best anti-theft device in the world. Good luck carjacking a car if you don't know how to run a manual transmission. But I've had a couple of pickup trucks and never would have gotten away from a pickup truck, except it turns out now you can't get a pickup truck without paying Mercedes-Benz prices. And I'm not sure that I understand why that is, that a pickup truck should be what it is. But for a long time, I had pickups. The other thing that I'll say about my brother's Mustang is it really got me hooked on the idea of convertibles. Because I have a very vivid memory of he and I driving to PCB, just the two of us, when we were in college, and going down, is it Highway 90? The coastal Highway 90, with the top down, just cruising, not trying to get anywhere at any particular time. And just cruising Highway 90, and and the sea breeze and the smell, and just feeling like you're the coolest thing in the world because you're in the right car for it. And it really sold me, so that very recently, when I had a chance to get a new car, that's what sold me on getting my very sad little I say sad. I got made fun of a lot in this little convertible Miata that I had. I fit in this car like a bowling ball fits in a teacup. And getting in and out of it, I kind of had to learn like there was a whole yoga sequence of getting in and out of this car, because I'm 6'2", and this car is made for people who are not any taller than 5'10". And getting in and out of it was a thing, but I just loved it because, all you have to do is mash a button, and, the hard top comes down. Just keep the button pushed in, hard top comes out, and you're in a convertible. And that whole thing from 30 years earlier of, being able to cruise around with the top down, I just absolutely love it. And so I really want to have a stick shift in any car that I have. And I really want to have something that you can take the top off. Well, so anyway, I've taken so much grief about that little Miata, and my wife won't drive around in it, where, finally I kind of get talked into or shamed into it. It's time to drive an adult car or something that a manly man would drive. And so, I will now, drum roll please, the car that I got was, the car that I got was a Ford Bronco. And that's a manly car. Yeah, it looks good. But, the problem was, there's like 7 different builds of Broncos, 7 different platforms. And so you have to be really specific about which one you want, because the amenities, not just the amenities, but the size of it and what it comes with are totally different. You know, there's some of them you can only get this kind of paint. There's another one you can only get these kind of seats if you get this particular build. And so I got, there's like 7 different builds, and I got like the number 2. Like number 7 is the one that cost you $80,000, and I got the number 2. And we go to the dealership like in August or September, and of course they have several of the number 7. I don't remember what the name of the build is called, but you know, number 7, you know, 70 or 80,000 bucks. It's got everything on it. It's got the giant pipes on the side and the sound system and the whole bit. And it's like if Arnold Schwarzenegger designed a school bus. It does, you know, and that got married to a Hummer, and those vehicles had a baby. That's what this thing was. Those they have, plenty of those on the lot. But you know, the little number 2 build that I wanted, those they have absolutely zero on the lot. And they said, well, we're going to have to build those. We're going to have to build it for you. And, you know, I thought it was custom because I was getting a manual transmission. They said, no, it doesn't matter. That we have none of these. There are none to sell. There's none on the lot. You know, I said, well, what if I went to a dealership? Be our guest, but nobody is going to have this. So I mess around on the internet. Sure enough, nobody within driving distance has got this. And this is where my thing about the news really came and bit me, because I have to backtrack a little bit and say, I completely stopped following the news well over a year ago. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been, but I got so, I don't know what the word is, frustrated or annoyed or tired of everything that I read was designed to make me mad, because those doggone fill in the blank, you know, can you believe what they're doing now? Can you believe what they're trying to get away with now? And I get so frustrated, and for no purpose. It did absolutely no good to follow the news. And it's weird because ever since I stopped, and I mean, I run away from the news. When it comes on, I cover my ears, I change the station, I change the conversation, whatever I can. I really, truly don't want to know what's going on. And people will say, did you hear about what happened with China, or did you hear about what happened with Russia? No, oh, that's right, you don't follow the news. Well, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Oh, yeah, but you need to know. Why do I need to know? There's nothing that I can do about it. I can't change it. Well, you need to know. Well, you don't need to know, and you're better off not knowing, because there's no, work on yourself, work on your life, not on what's going on in some place that you can't affect, except if you want to get a car, because for reasons that I have absolutely no knowledge of, the idea that somebody in Michigan can build a car on the assembly lines, which I assume are still there, and the auto workers, I assume, are still all there. Forget about it. Excuse me. I ordered this thing in late August or early September, and it's basic. I mean, they didn't have to, import, diamonds or gold or anything to build this car. It's a basic vehicle. And they said it's going to be the holidays before this thing's going to be delivered, which I couldn't believe it. But okay, apparently there's something going on in the news, and everybody except for me knows why it would be that it takes 3 months for them to build a car. But anyway, the holidays got here, no car, and in January, I got this bizarre email from Ford that said, we're in the process of getting the thing scheduled to be built. Not that it has been scheduled to be built, but we are in the process of getting the thing on the schedule to be built. And so anyway, to make a long story short, picked it up last week, and the difference between driving a car that weighs as much as an empty beer can, and I basically feel like I'm driving a U-Haul truck now. it's a completely different experience. So that's the update on the big thing that's going on in my life is I'm now driving the equivalent of a Arnold Schwarzenegger U-Haul truck. But good luck stealing it if you don't know how to drive a stick. The only other thing that's going on, I said this is going to be short. I'm definitely not going to go an hour. The only other thing that I will say is it's Super Bowl Sunday, so that's probably another reason to cut things short. I think it's really interesting the way that the NFL hatched this plot that that they would make some random artist really, really famous by whoever wins the Super Bowl gets to take it. Have you seen this girl, this blonde girl, who apparently whoever wins the Super Bowl gets custody of this blonde girl? And I think Kansas City won last year, and so they have custody of her. Like they can't stop showing her during the game. And so whoever wins the Super Bowl gets custody of her. And so she might be living in San Francisco next year, which probably that's what she wants. Or, she'll have to go back and live in Kansas City. But, I think it's really cool the way that they took somebody nobody's ever heard of. And now apparently she's like really famous in her own right. And Taylor Swift. Now she's got concerts of her own and people buy tickets of her own, so I think I think all the sports should do that, is just pick up some random, certainly certainly. Well, I don't know if she's got talent or not. I mean, she's attractive, and attractive makes up for a lot, and just, like that, the baseball girl, and they just show her at all the games, and then that team gets custody of her until the next World Series. I think that would be great. So she seems very excited about it. So probably it's like she's living in Kansas City. That's basically like living in jail, which is probably why she's touring, so that she can get out of Kansas City. That's the theory that I have. You don't follow the news. This is what I've pieced together so far. It meets all the known facts, so I think it's a workable theory. So, all right, I promised. I said that it would be a short show. That's about all that I've got. I promise it will be much longer because it's going to be abusive next week. But we did get in. My voice held out. I'm happy about that. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I think we'll cut it here. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.